Hey, it's Laura Kleber with My Home Matters, back for the project of the week, and that is these little nautical rope bunnies, which turned out so super cute. So I got the rope from the Dollar Tree, and I got two sizes. I wasn't sure which size I wanted to use, and I had seen these done, on a couple other places using the smaller, thinner that I'm using here, but I also wanted to try the bigger one. So I did that first, and I learned a couple of things. So I'm back to do the smaller one, showing you so that I can make sure that you don't make the same mistakes that I did the first time. So the first thing I did was I cut the taped end off, and then I kind of stuffed a little bit of hot glue in amongst all of the fibers of the rope and twisted it together with my fingers to make sure that it stayed and didn't fray. So that's why I have these little things on my fingers. I will grab the link for those. I believe I got them at Amazon, and I'll put them in the description. They are finger savers for sure, because you really do have to get right in there with that hot glue, and it could really be difficult without them. So I started trying to make a really tight circle to start with. And then eventually I was just going to keep working my way around, making concentric circles. So I just had to put a little bit of glue along the edge that I was working my way towards, and then wrap it, put a little bit more and wrap it. And I started out up off of the mat because I needed to kind of hold it all together. And then once I had it big enough that I could kind of let it be a little bit more, I didn't have to hold it so tight with my fingers, I ended up putting it down on the mat and working my way around that way. So I would put like a couple of inches worth of glue along the length there and wrap it, and then make sure that that was tight and sticking. And then I would go and continue all the way around. So I did this until I got close to the end of the 9.5 feet. I wanted to kind of allot you'll see me kind of allot for that at the end. As I speed this up, I kind of made sure that I accounted for enough to do the two ears, because I wanted to wait and see if they would look right proportionally. So I cut a little piece off at the end, put it aside, and then used the rest of it until I ran out. And then at the end, I glued again within the fibers of that last little cut piece. I cut the tape off, put some glue in there, made sure that it was all not going to fray apart. And then that way, I knew I had a bunny that was going to be proportionate to the other one, but yet smaller. So the next thing I did was I wanted to finish off the back, because the glue was mostly showing up on the back. There's a little bit on the front, but it gets a little messy on the back if the glue squishes out. So I'm just showing you here what I did before I remembered to turn the video back on. And that was I put a bead of glue all the way around the outer edge, and then a little bit throughout the center, flipped it over, pressed it on a piece of burlap, pressed it on there good, and now I'm cutting and trimming the excess burlap. Now I had some sheets of burlap. If your bunny's small enough, you could use a piece of rolled burlap, or, if you have burlap like by the yard in fabric, but I just had these little sheets, so it worked out okay. I think a roll of ribbon would have been wide enough for this one, but it wouldn't have been for my larger one. And you don't have to do that to the back. It just gives it more of a finished look. So then I took the piece that I had saved for the ears, and I fold with the length of them to make sure I had them how I wanted them. There you can see the back. And I was kind of playing in my mind, do I want them attached to the back so that they extend down a little bit the back? Or do I want to really try to glue them just to the edge? And at first I thought I really needed that help of having the back, more for it to adhere to, more surface area for it to adhere to. So I kind of put it down a little bit over the back. But ultimately, and you'll see in a couple seconds, when I go to do the other side, I decided I didn't like that. I ended up wanting them to be glued right to the edge. So I kind of pulled this piece off in a second, and then glued the other one onto the edge, and then moved this one onto the edge as well. You just have to be patient with it to stick. And I tried to get the glue, even though I was trying to glue it sort of in between the edge and the end of the rope, I was trying to keep it from squishing too much out the front. But I also knew that on the one ear, I was going to be covering it potentially with a bow. At least that's what I did on the bigger one. But this one, I was thinking I would do a bow tie. So I wanted to really try to keep down on the amount of glue that squished out on the front side. So anything that squished out, I was trying to make it not visible by doing it on the back. So my nicely covered finished back did get a little bit messed up, but if I did more of these, I would know what not to do the next time. So there I am putting glue on the end of the cut piece and then pressing it right into the outer part of the circle. And then you'll see me move the other one out to do the same thing because it didn't quite adhere completely by then. So you have to give it a little bit of time to actually stay stuck before you move on to the next one. But those things on my fingers were really key because you have to really get in there and work with it. So I add a little bit of extra, and then I went on and did the other one. So once those were glued enough that they weren't sticking to anything when I flipped it back over and they were stuck well enough, kind of on the dry side, then I decided I was just going to use burlap for the back of these ears, but for the bigger one I did ribbon. So basically I'm just showing you that if you lay it down on top of either one, whichever one you decide on, you want your ears to make sure that they will fit on whichever you decide. If you want the ribbon, you're going to put a bead of glue on the back of the rope for this ear and then lay it down immediately on top of the ribbon. Or if you want the burlap, you're going to lay it down immediately on top of the burlap like I'm doing here. But you would do the same thing with the ribbon. You just have to make sure your ears are narrow enough to fit on whatever ribbon you're using. And then I press it down, make sure it's stuck, and then once that's good and stuck, then you can take your scissors and kind of go along the outside and trim that all off. And do the same thing for the other one. And you can also kind of put a little bead along the bottom edge of the ear on the back to make sure that that piece stays stuck as well. So now it's time to actually put the bow on. So you can make your bow however you want. But for the first one, I put the bow up along the one ear, and I put a little burlap flower in the center over top of it. I hot glued all of that on. For this one, I wanted him to have more of a bow tie. So I made my bow, and I used some green wire to kind of insert and attach it through. I could have just hot glued it, but I did want to try to attach it a little bit better because it was on the bigger side. I ultimately changed my mind when I was done with this and went to take the picture. The bow looked too big in proportion to the actual bunny itself. So I'm going to show you what I'm doing here, but then I'm going to change my mind and take it back off. And then I made a smaller one, which I'll show you also. But the idea here is the same. I get the bow attached, and then I took a little white, well, first I put some hot glue in there and made sure that it stuck that way. And then I took a little white rosette flower that I had and glued it into the center to kind of finish off the middle of the bow. So ideally, that's really the process for making the bow tie. But I did want to make it smaller, so I ended up taking this back off, which wasn't that easy because it was hot glued on with a lot of hot glue, and doing a smaller one, which I will show you now. So all I wanted to use the same color because it matched so well with the bow on the other bunny. So I just took a piece probably 13, 14 inches long. I folded it over. I could have cut the wire off and just cut it down lengthwise, but I wanted that wire because it helps me to form it. So I just folded it over in half, and then I kind of made a loop one way and then crisscrossed and made a loop the other way, or, just crisscrossed it over there. So at the center then, once those two sides were crisscrossed over, I kind of just pinched them together with my fingers in the center there. And I grabbed a little piece of wire, wrapped it around where I had pinched it together, and tightened it up, twisted it in the back as good as I could. It wasn't that long of a wire. I twisted it real good. I would have inserted this through from front to back, just like I did on the bigger bow, but because there was so much hot glue there from the first time and I had taken that off, I couldn't get it to go through the second time. So I just kind of tucked it to the back and hid it, and then just used, first I trimmed off the edges. I just angled them off, trimmed them off so that they were about even. And then I just used some hot glue to add the bow to the bunny. I didn't actually push those wires through, and that was fine. I just added that to the bottom of the bunny in the same spot. I did this once already and forgot to show you. So I added it to the bottom of the bunny, and then I added that little white rosette just like the other one. And then that was it, just all using hot glue. And I'm so happy with how they turned out. So subscribe to my channel if you want to watch every week. You'll get notified. And you can follow me on social media. My Home Matters LLC is where we are on Facebook. And then Instagram and Pinterest is my_home_matters. We'll be back next week. Usually on Thursdays is when we post. Thanks so much.